I'm sorry, it's unconscionable. The only reason those progressives are in Congress are to draw the kind of contrast between them and Hakeem Jeffries that will help average Americans realize the Democratic Party isn't there to help you.
This is Briahna Joy Gray. I believe she is the former National Press Secretary for the Bernie Sanders 2020 campaign. She completely breaks down how the squad are complete frauds in less than 30 seconds.
I'm sorry, it's unconscionable. The only reason those progressives are in Congress are to draw the kind of contrast between them and Hakeem Jeffries that will help average Americans realize the Democratic Party isn't there to help you. No one's coming to help you unless you have some radical reform and, frankly, revolutionary level reform. And as long as they are not saying that out loud, they are tacitly covering for people like Hakeem Jeffries. And right now, in this moment, what's going on in Congress, they're explicitly covering for Hakeem Jeffries.
So 2 years ago, we have a very slim Democratic majority in the House of Representatives, and Nancy Pelosi was up for the vote of Speaker of the House. Sound familiar to what's happening recently? Now, the Dems had the exact same numbers, this very slim majority. It would only take 5, 6, a handful of squad progressives to block any legislation and force concessions for their vote, including the vote for Speaker of the House. The prevailing wisdom for the people who oppose this, both the corporate Democrats, the progressives who went out there and lied to people, and all of the so-called progressive media heads in YouTube, the prevailing wisdom from them was, this is actually a dangerous thing to do. Kevin McCarthy will become Speaker unless everyone votes for Nancy Pelosi. So that was the one major lie. And the other major lie, if we fight for Medicare for all, right, if we do force the vote, and that strategy can work, which they were saying it can't, they were saying we're going to elect a Republican if we tried to do it, which is wrong. How if we fought for Medicare for all and we forced a vote on Medicare for all, that it was going to hurt the fight for Medicare for all and it was going to take us backwards. So somehow fighting for something was going to make it worse, okay? Now we see the reality. Republicans have fought Kevin McCarthy for his speakership vote, and they have gained a handful of concessions in return for their vote to allow him to become Speaker of the House. If the Dems were correct 2 years ago, when Matt Gaetz and all these Republicans were refusing to vote for Kevin McCarthy, Hakeem Jeffries should have become Speaker of the House by their logic, which was not real logic. It was a lie. It wasn't real. They were lying. They also said that if we fought for Medicare for all, that it would hurt Medicare for all, and that they were going to save their political capital for things they could fight for. AOC famously tried to talk down to Justin Jackson, football player, running back, political activist, and tell him that they were going to save their political capital for something they could fight for, like a fight for 15. And then in COVID negotiations, the progressives said nothing when $15 minimum wage was taken out of the omnibus spending bill. Bernie Sanders tried to reintroduce it. It was no longer under budget reconciliation, so then it takes 60 votes to pass, meaning it would never pass. Progressives would say things like, we cannot fight for Medicare for all because it's going to make us worse off. And then they lied and gave a bunch of excuses why, and I just explained why it was a lie. But the other lie was that it would hurt Medicare for all. We have just seen that corporate media, network media, YouTube media, Twitter, everyone stopped and watched this show of the Republicans trying to square things away and pick a Speaker of the House. So for days and days and days on end, we would have watched the same thing happened, these corporate Dems melting down to a bunch of members of the squad sitting there holding their ground. And we would have been forced to talk about, what are they holding their ground for? Medicare for all. So we would have been forced to talk about, for a week straight, the media would have been forced to talk about and have conversations about Medicare for all during a deadly pandemic. The squad could have went out there and screamed at the top of their lungs, we're not voting for Nancy Pelosi until we give people health care. We want to promise to bring up a bill to give people health care. But they didn't. So these guys are indeed the fraud squad. They are liars. They're just another batch of politicians. I was duped by them initially. I'm no longer duped. One other sad aspect of this, the Republicans forcing the vote, gaining concessions. Many of them are things I don't agree with, but they've gained concessions on other things, possibly cutting the military budget, possibly having a church-style committee, a church 2.0, to look into abuses of the FBI and other security state apparatuses. Not only have the Republicans forced the vote and gained concessions and exposed how the progressives, how the squad are frauds, and how they didn't do anything when they had power. They had power to fight for people, and they purposely didn't do anything and followed Nancy Pelosi. They're going on talk shows and they're gloating about how united they were and how united the Democratic Party is and how disoriented the Republicans are. And there's two things I have to say to that. You guys are proud of being united. If you're united as a Democratic Party, that means you're united to do bad things to people. You're united to do bad things to the country. Same as a united Republican Party. And second, having a vote for Speaker of the House be something other than a rubber stamp process, having it actually be a democratic process where people fought for concessions and had more than one round of voting, that's not a bad thing, nor is it a bad look. That's how it should look all the time in Congress, and it doesn't look like that, and that should be concerning to you. It shouldn't be concerning that people are disagreeing in Congress. That's a good thing. People should be there vigorously debating and fighting for concessions and fighting each other for different agendas. We shouldn't have these uniparties rubber stamping these horrible corporate bills that are 10,000 pages long, etc., etc. Good job on Briahna Joy Gray exposing the squad.
What's the matter? The CIA got you pushing too many pencils? Huh?